The bullet that grazed Clara Turner's shoulder in the dusty streets of Fort McDowell, Arizona Territory in 1878, taught her something she had known all her life. Nothing came without a cost, especially kindness from strangers. She stumbled into the alley between the general store and the saloon, pressing her hand against the burning wound, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The men who had followed her from the trading post would be looking for her, and she had nowhere to go. Her father's debts had become her burden when he died 3 months ago, and the creditors did not care that she was alone in the world at 22 years old. They wanted their money, and when she could not pay, they decided to take it from her in other ways. Clara slid down against the rough wooden wall, her vision blurring. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly, and she could hear the sounds of the town continuing as if nothing was wrong. That was how it always worked. People looked away when trouble came calling, unless you had something to offer them in return for their help. "Madam, you are bleeding." The voice came from above her, deep and steady. Clara looked up, squinting against the bright sky, and saw a tall figure blocking the sun. For a moment, she thought she might be dying, that this was some angel come to take her away. But then he crouched down, and she could see his face clearly. He was young, maybe 25, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of aged whiskey. He wore a dusty hat, a worn leather vest over a simple shirt, and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who spent his days in the saddle. "I can see that," Clara said, her voice tight with pain. "Unless you are a doctor, I suggest you keep moving. The men who did this will not take kindly to anyone helping me." The cowboy tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Well, I am not a doctor, but I know how to tend a wound, and I have never been much concerned with what cruel men think of me." "I cannot pay you," Clara said quickly, because that was always the next question. Everything had a price. Every kindness came with an expectation. But the cowboy just shook his head and said, "Did I ask you to?" Before Clara could respond, he was already shrugging out of his vest. He tore a strip from his shirt without hesitation, his movements efficient and practiced. "This is going to hurt," he warned, and then he was pressing the cloth against her shoulder, applying pressure that made her gasp. "What is your name?" she asked through gritted teeth, needing something to focus on besides the pain. "Ethan Anders," he replied, not looking away from his work. "And yours?" "Clara Turner." "Well, Miss Turner, I think you are lucky. Bullet just grazed you. Going to hurt like the devil for a while, but you will keep your arm." He tied the makeshift bandage securely, his fingers surprisingly gentle. "Now, do you want to tell me why someone is shooting at a lady in broad daylight?" Clara laughed, a bitter sound. "Because I owe money I do not have. My father was a gambler, and when he died, his debts became mine. The men he borrowed from are not patient, and they are not kind." Ethan's jaw tightened. "How much do you owe?" $200. "I have been working at the boarding house, cleaning rooms and doing laundry, but Mrs. Henderson only pays me 50 cents a day. At this rate, it will take me more than a year to pay it off, and those men want their money now." She closed her eyes, feeling suddenly exhausted. "You should go. They will be looking for me." "Then we had better get you somewhere safe," Ethan said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Clara opened her eyes. "Did you not hear me? I cannot pay you for your help. I have nothing to offer you." Something flickered in Ethan's expression, something that might have been sadness or disappointment. "Miss Turner, I am starting to think someone has done you a great disservice if you believe every act of kindness must be purchased." He stood and offered her his hand. "I have a room at the boarding house where I stay when I am in town. You can rest there while I figure out what to do about these men." "Why would you do this?" Clara asked, but she took his hand anyway, letting him pull her to her feet. Her head spun and she swayed. Ethan steadied her, his arm coming around her waist. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because I was raised to believe that a person's character is measured by how they treat those who can do nothing for them in return." Clara had no response to that. In her experience, such people did not exist. But her shoulder was throbbing, and she had nowhere else to go, so she let Ethan guide her through the back alleys of Fort McDowell, avoiding the main street. He moved with the easy familiarity of someone who knew the town well, and within minutes they were slipping in through the back door of Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. Mrs. Henderson was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough. She looked up when they entered, her eyes widening at the sight of Clara's bloodied shoulder. "Good Lord, what happened?" "Miss Turner had an accident," Ethan said smoothly. "She needs to rest. I am taking her up to my room." Mrs. Henderson's expression turned suspicious. "Now, Mr. Anders, I run a respectable establishment." "And I am a respectable man, madam," Ethan replied, his tone patient. "I will leave the door open, and you are welcome to check on us as often as you like, but Miss Turner needs to lie down before she falls down." The older woman hesitated, then nodded. "I will bring up some hot water and clean bandages. Clara, child, why did you not tell me you were in trouble?" "Because trouble is expensive, Mrs. Henderson," Clara said quietly, "and I have nothing left to spend." Mrs. Henderson's face softened with understanding, and she shooed them toward the stairs. Ethan's room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the street. He helped Clara sit on the bed, then pulled the curtain closed. "Rest," he said. "Mrs. Henderson will be up soon with supplies to clean that wound properly. I am going to go have a conversation with these men who think they can shoot women in the street." "No," Clara said sharply, trying to stand. The room tilted, and she sat back down hard. "You do not understand what they are like. There are 3 of them, and they are not above murder. They will kill you." "Then they will try," Ethan said, and there was something in his voice that made Clara look at him more closely. He did not sound afraid. He sounded calm, certain, as if he had faced worse and survived. "Who are you?" she asked. A slight smile touched his lips. "Just a cowboy, Miss Turner. But before I started working cattle, I spent some time as a lawman down in Texas. I know how to handle men like these." He moved to the door, then paused. "What are their names?" "The leader is called Jack Morrison. The other 2 are his brothers, Sam and Pete. They usually spend their afternoons at the Silver Spur Saloon." Ethan nodded. "I will be back soon. Try not to worry." "Mr. Anders," Clara called as he started to leave. He turned back, his expression patient. "Why are you doing this? You do not know me. You owe me nothing." He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "My mother used to say that kindness is not a transaction, Miss Turner. It is a way of being. She died when I was 15, and I promised her that I would try to live the kind of life that would make her proud. That means helping people who need it, not because they can repay me, but because it is what decent people do." He tipped his hat. "Rest now. I will handle this." And then he was gone, his boots heavy on the wooden stairs. Clara lay back on the bed, her mind spinning. She did not understand Ethan Anders. In her experience, everyone wanted something. Her father had taught her that in his way. He had been charming and kind when he needed money, cold and distant when he did not. The men in Fort McDowell were the same. They smiled and offered help, but there was always a price, always an expectation. Mrs. Henderson arrived with hot water, clean bandages, and a stern expression. She cleaned Clara's wound with efficient care, tusking over the bullet graze. "This is going to scar, child," she said. "But Mr. Anders was right. You were lucky. A few inches to the left and that bullet would have hit something vital. "Mrs. Henderson," Clara asked as the older woman worked, "what do you know about Ethan Anders?" The boarding house keeper glanced up, surprised. "Mr. Anders. He is a good man. Works for the Double R Ranch about 10 miles west of here. Comes into town once a week for supplies and to send letters back to his family in Texas. He is quiet, polite, always pays his bills on time. Why do you ask?" "He is helping me," Clara said slowly. "And he says he wants nothing in return." Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Then I would believe him, child. That young man is exactly what he appears to be, which is a rare thing in this world. I have been running this boarding house for 20 years, and I have gotten good at reading people. Mr. Anders is one of the genuine ones." Clara wanted to believe that, but trust was a luxury she had learned to live without. Mrs. Henderson finished bandaging the wound and helped Clara out of her bloodied dress. She brought one of her own nightgowns for Clara to wear, then insisted she drink some willow bark tea for the pain. "You sleep now," she ordered. "I will be downstairs if you need anything." But Clara could not sleep. She lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the town through the window. Somewhere out there, Ethan Anders was confronting 3 dangerous men on behalf of a woman he had just met. It made no sense. Nothing about this day made sense. She must have dozed eventually, because when she opened her eyes, the light coming through the window had changed. It was late afternoon now, the shadows growing long. And Ethan was sitting in the chair by the window, his hat on the small table beside him, watching her with those steady amber eyes. "You are back," Clara said, her voice rough with sleep. "Are you hurt?" "No, madam," Ethan replied. He looked tired but unharmed. "I found the Morrison brothers at the Silver Spur, just like you said. We had a conversation." Clara sat up slowly, her shoulder aching. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where I explained that shooting women in the street is not acceptable behavior, and that if they came near you again, I would make sure the territorial marshal heard all about their activities." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Turns out the Morrison brothers have been running a loan shark operation throughout the territory, charging interest rates that would make a bank robber blush. The marshal has been looking for evidence against them for months." "You threatened to turn them in," Clara said, understanding. "I did more than threaten. I sent a telegram to Marshal Cooper in Tucson. He is very interested in speaking with them." Ethan's expression was serious. "But that does not solve your immediate problem. The debt is still real, even if the way they have been collecting it is illegal." Clara felt her brief hope crumble. "Then nothing has changed. I still owe $200. "Actually, things have changed quite a bit," Ethan said. "I spoke with a lawyer in town, a man named Harold Peterson. He looked at your father's debt, and it turns out the Morrison brothers added their own fees and interest to the original amount. Your father borrowed $50. The rest is all their markup. Mr. Peterson is going to challenge the debt in court, and he thinks he can get it reduced significantly." "And how much does Mr. Peterson charge for his services?" Clara asked, because lawyers were not known for their charity. Ethan hesitated. "He owes me a favor. A few months back, I helped him recover some stolen property. He has agreed to handle your case for free." Clara stared at him. "Why are you doing all of this? What do you want from me?" The question seemed to hurt him. She could see it in the way his expression tightened, the way he looked away. "I do not want anything from you, Miss Turner," he said quietly. "I am just trying to help." "Nobody helps for free," Clara insisted. "There is always a cost, always." Ethan stood and moved to the window, looking out at the street below. For a long moment he was silent. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "When I was 17, I watched my father drink himself to death. He was a good man once, but he lost my mother and could not find his way back from that grief. He spent everything we had on whiskey, and by the time he died, I was alone with nothing but debts and a failing farm. He turned back to face her. I was angry and scared, and I did not know what to do. Then one day, a neighbor showed up at our door with a wagon full of supplies. Food, tools, everything I needed to keep going. I tried to tell him I could not pay him back, but he just said that when I was in a position to help someone else, I should do it. He said that is how communities survive, by taking care of each other. Ethan came back to the chair and sat down. That man saved my life, Miss Turner. He gave me a chance to build something new, and I have spent the last 8 years trying to pass that kindness on. So when I see someone in trouble, I help if I can. Not because I want something in return, but because that is what was done for me. That is what decent people do. Clara felt something crack in her chest, some hard shell she had built around herself. I do not know how to accept help without expecting the bill to come later, she admitted. Then maybe we can figure it out together, Ethan said gently. No bills. No expectations. Just two people trying to do the right thing. The door opened and Mrs. Henderson poked her head in. Mr. Anders, you have left this door wide open. Good. Clara, child, are you hungry? I have stew on the stove. Clara realized she was starving. She had not eaten since breakfast, before everything went wrong. Yes, madam. Thank you. Mrs. Henderson brought up 2 bowls of stew and fresh bread, insisting they both eat. Ethan pulled the chair closer to the bed, and they ate in comfortable silence. The stew was rich and hearty, and Clara felt strength seeping back into her body with each bite. So what happens now? She asked when she had finished. Now you rest and heal, Ethan said. Mr. Peterson will handle the legal matters with the Morrison brothers. The marshal will be here by the end of the week to take them into custody, and you can keep working for Mrs. Henderson without having to worry about being shot in the street. And you, Clara asked, you said you work at a ranch. When do you go back? I was supposed to head out tomorrow, Ethan admitted, but I think I will stay in town for a few more days, just to make sure everything settles down properly. You do not have to do that, Clara said, but she was surprised to find she wanted him to stay. This strange cowboy with his incomprehensible kindness was unlike anyone she had ever met, and she found herself wanting to understand him better. I know I do not have to, Ethan replied, but I want to, if that is all right with you. Clara nodded slowly. It is all right with me. Over the next 3 days, Clara learned that Ethan Anders was exactly what he claimed to be, a man who gave kindness freely. Every morning he brought her breakfast before Mrs. Henderson even came upstairs. Fresh biscuits, eggs, sometimes bacon or sausage. He would sit with her while she ate, telling her stories about his work at the ranch, about the cattle drives and the wide open spaces of the Arizona Territory. He never asked her for anything, never hinted that she owed him. He just showed up, morning after morning, with food and conversation and a smile that made her heart do strange things in her chest. On the 4th day, Clara felt well enough to get out of bed and dress properly. Mrs. Henderson had cleaned and mended her dress, and Clara put it on carefully, mindful of her healing shoulder. When Ethan arrived with breakfast that morning, he found her standing by the window, looking out at the street. You are up, he said, sounding pleased. How are you feeling? Better, Clara replied honestly. Stronger. She turned to face him. Mr. Anders, I want to thank you for everything you have done. I know I have been difficult about accepting your help, but I am grateful, more grateful than I know how to express. Ethan set the breakfast tray on the table. You do not have to thank me, Miss Turner. Yes, I do, Clara insisted. And I want to understand, how can you just keep giving like this, helping people, expecting nothing in return? Do you not get tired? Do you not feel used? He considered the question seriously. Sometimes, he admitted. There have been times when I helped someone and they took advantage. But that says more about them than it does about me. I cannot control how other people behave, but I can control my own actions, and I choose to be kind. It sounds exhausting, Clara said softly. It can be, Ethan agreed. But it is also the most rewarding thing I have ever done. The way you are looking at me right now, like you are seeing something you thought did not exist, that is worth more than any payment, Miss Turner. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She had been looking at him differently, she realized. Not with suspicion or wariness, but with something warmer, something dangerous. Clara, she said impulsively, you have been bringing me breakfast for 4 days straight. I think you can call me Clara. Ethan's face lit up with a smile that took her breath away. Clara, he repeated, and the way he said her name made it sound like something precious. Then you should call me Ethan. Ethan, Clara said, testing it out. It felt right on her tongue, familiar somehow, even though they had known each other less than a week. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. Mrs. Henderson entered with her usual efficiency. Mr. Peterson is downstairs, Clara. He has news about your case. Clara's stomach tightened with anxiety, but Ethan stood and offered her his arm. Whatever it is, we will face it together, he said. They went downstairs to find Harold Peterson waiting in Mrs. Henderson's parlor. He was a small man with spectacles and an impressive mustache, and he looked pleased with himself. Miss Turner, Mr. Anders, good morning. I have excellent news. The judge agreed to review your father's debt, and after examining the Morrison brothers' records, he has ruled that you owe only the original $50, with no interest. Furthermore, given the illegal methods the Morrisons used in their collection attempts, the judge has ordered them to pay your medical expenses and court costs. Clara felt her knees go weak. Ethan's arm tightened around her, holding her steady. $50, she repeated. I can actually pay that. Indeed, Mr. Peterson said, smiling. At your current wages, you should be able to settle the debt in a few months, and the Morrison brothers will not be troubling you. Marshal Cooper arrived yesterday and arrested all 3 of them. They are being transported to Tucson to stand trial for fraud and assault. Thank you, Mr. Peterson, Clara said, her voice trembling. Thank you so much. The lawyer waved off her gratitude. Thank Mr. Anders here. He is the one who brought this to my attention. He tipped his hat to them both. If you need anything else, you know where to find me. After he left, Clara turned to Ethan. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. I cannot believe it, she said. I thought I would be in debt forever. I thought those men would never leave me alone. You are free, Clara, Ethan said gently, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was tender, intimate, and Clara found herself leaning into his touch. Because of you, she whispered. All because of you. No, Ethan said. Because of a good lawyer and a fair judge and laws that protect people from predators. I just connected the pieces. But Clara shook her head. You did more than that. You showed me that kindness exists without conditions. You changed everything I thought I knew about people. She took a shaky breath. I do not know how to repay you. Ethan's hand was still on her cheek and his eyes were very serious. There is nothing to repay, but Clara, I need to be honest with you about something. What is it? Clara asked, her heart suddenly racing. When I said I did not want anything from you, I meant it, Ethan began. I did not help you expecting payment or favors. But these past few days, getting to know you, talking with you, seeing your strength and your spirit, I have developed feelings that have nothing to do with debt or obligation. Clara's breath caught. What kind of feelings? The kind where I find myself looking forward to breakfast more than I have looked forward to anything in years, Ethan said softly. The kind where I want to know everything about you. Your favorite color, what makes you laugh, what you dream about at night. The kind where I am going to have a very hard time riding back to the Double R Ranch because it means I will not see you every day." "Oh," Clara said, the sound barely audible. Her mind was racing. She had been so focused on protecting herself, on expecting the worst from everyone, that she had not let herself acknowledge what was growing between them. But now that Ethan had said it out loud, she could not deny it anymore. "I have feelings too," she admitted. "I did not want to. I tried not to. But every morning when you brought breakfast, I found myself wishing you would stay longer. And when I think about you leaving, it makes my chest ache." Ethan's eyes softened. "Then maybe I do not have to leave," he said. "The Double R always needs help, but there are other ranches, other jobs. And Fort McDowell is a nice town." "You would stay?" Clara asked, hope blooming in her chest. "Even though I come with nothing? I am still in debt, still working for 50 cents a day. I cannot offer you anything except myself." "Clara," Ethan said, and his voice was rough with emotion, "you are not nothing, and I do not want you to offer me anything. I want to build something with you together as equals. Not because either of us owes the other, but because we choose to." Clara had spent so long believing that love was transactional, that affection had to be earned and maintained through constant effort and sacrifice. But Ethan was offering something different, something free and open and terrifying in its simplicity. "I am afraid," she whispered. "What if I do not know how to do this? What if I keep waiting for you to ask for payment?" "Then I will keep proving to you that it is not coming," Ethan said. "Every single day for as long as it takes. I am a patient man, Clara, and you are worth the wait." She made her decision in that moment, letting go of years of protective cynicism and choosing to trust. She reached up and placed her hand over his, pressing it more firmly against her cheek. "Stay," she said. "Please stay." Ethan leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Clara did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted the possibility of something good and true. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet, a promise rather than a demand. When they finally pulled apart, Mrs. Henderson was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, but she was smiling. "About time," the older woman said. "I was wondering how long you two were going to dance around each other. But Mr. Anders, if you are going to court this girl properly, you need to start thinking about your future. Clara deserves a man who can provide stability." "Yes, madam," Ethan said, grinning. "I will ride out to the Double R tomorrow and let them know I am looking for something closer to town. I have been saving my wages carefully. I have enough to start my own small spread if I can find the right piece of land. Or," Mrs. Henderson said thoughtfully, "you could consider the Anderson property. It is a small ranch about 5 miles south of town. Old Mr. Anderson passed last month and his widow is looking to sell. It is not much, just a house and a barn and 20 acres, but the price is reasonable. You could run cattle on it, maybe some horses." Ethan looked at Clara. "What do you think? Would you want to live on a ranch?" Clara felt overwhelmed by how fast things were moving, but also exhilarated. For the first time in years, she was making choices about her future instead of just surviving day to day. "I grew up on a farm," she said. "Before my father started gambling, we had a good life working the land. I miss it. I miss having something to tend to, watching things grow." "Then we will go look at the Anderson property," Ethan decided. "Together, and if it is right, we will figure out how to make it work." "Mr. Anders," Mrs. Henderson interjected, "I hope you are not thinking of taking Clara out to live with you unmarried. I told you I run a respectable establishment and this town has standards." Ethan turned red. "No, madam, I would never. If Clara is willing, we will do this right. Proper courtship, proper engagement, proper wedding." Clara found herself laughing, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she had laughed? "Are you proposing, Ethan Anders?" "Not yet," Ethan said, his embarrassment fading into something warmer. "When I propose, it is going to be special. You deserve special, Clara." Over the next several weeks, Clara discovered what it meant to be courted by a good man. Ethan found work at a ranch closer to town, and every evening after his work was done, he would come to Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. Sometimes they would sit on the porch and talk. Sometimes they would walk through town together, Ethan's hand resting respectfully on her arm. Sometimes he would bring her small gifts, a ribbon for her hair, a book he thought she would enjoy, wildflowers picked on his ride into town. And every single morning, without fail, he brought her breakfast. It became their ritual, their special time together before the day began. Clara would wake to his familiar knock, and when she opened the door, there he would be with his easy smile and whatever he had managed to procure from Mrs. Henderson's kitchen. "Good morning," he would say, and Clara would feel her whole day brighten. She learned so much about him during those morning visits. He told her about his childhood in Texas, about his mother who had taught him to read and his father who had taught him to ride. He told her about the years after they died, when he was angry at the world and made more mistakes than he cared to count. He told her about the neighbor who had shown him kindness, and how that single act had changed the trajectory of his life. "His name was Samuel Wright," Ethan said one morning as they shared biscuits and jam. "He was a tough old rancher, weathered and gruff, but he had the biggest heart of anyone I ever met. When I tried to thank him for helping me, he said something I have never forgotten. He said that kindness is not about the receiver, it is about the giver. It is about what kind of person you choose to be, regardless of how others respond." "That is a beautiful way to think about it," Clara said, "but also terrifying. It means you have to be vulnerable all the time, open to being hurt." "Yes," Ethan agreed. "But the alternative is to close yourself off, to never risk anything, and that is a kind of death too. I would rather be hurt sometimes and still be fully alive than protect myself so much that I stop feeling anything at all." Clara was quiet, thinking about that. She had spent so long protecting herself, building walls to keep pain out. But those walls had also kept out joy, connection, love. Ethan was teaching her that it was possible to be both careful and open, to assess risk without letting fear rule your life. She told him about her own past, about growing up on a small farm with parents who had loved each other fiercely. "My father was not always a gambler," she said. "When my mother was alive, he was responsible, hardworking. They were happy together. But when she died in childbirth, trying to give him the son he wanted, something broke in him. He started drinking, started gambling, started looking for ways to forget his pain. And I was just a reminder of what he had lost." "That must have been so hard," Ethan said, taking her hand, "to lose both your parents even though one of them was still alive." "It was," Clara admitted. "I learned to take care of myself because I could not count on him. And I learned that people take advantage of weakness, that kindness is usually a prelude to exploitation. When he died and left me with his debts, it just confirmed everything I already believed." "But not anymore," Ethan asked gently. Clara squeezed his hand. "You are changing my mind. Every morning when you show up with breakfast, every time you help me without asking for anything in return, you prove that I was wrong. Not about everyone, maybe. There are still cruel people in the world, but about you, and about the possibility that good people exist." "They do exist," Ethan said. "And Clara, you are one of them. You have survived terrible things and you are still kind, still strong. You have every right to be bitter and closed off, but you are sitting here giving me a chance, choosing to hope. That takes courage." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She had not thought of herself as courageous. She had thought of herself as a victim, as someone things happened to rather than someone who made choices. But Ethan saw her differently, and slowly, she was starting to see herself through his eyes. The Anderson property turned out to be perfect. The house was small but sturdy, with 2 bedrooms and a cozy kitchen. The barn needed some repairs, but Ethan assured Clara he could handle that. The land was good, with a stream running through it and enough grazing area for a modest herd of cattle. Mrs. Anderson, a kind woman in her 60s, seemed relieved to find a buyer who would care for the place her late husband had loved. "He built this house with his own hands," she told them as they walked the property. "We raised our children here, made a good life. I hope you will too." Ethan negotiated a fair price, and they shook hands on the deal. He would take possession in 2 months, which gave him time to save a bit more money and make arrangements for his first purchase of cattle. "It is really happening," Clara said as they rode back to town in the wagon Ethan had borrowed. "We are going to have a home." "We are," Ethan agreed. "But Clara, I meant what I said to Mrs. Henderson. I want to do this right. Will you marry me?" "Not because you owe me, not because you need security, but because you want to build a life with me." Clara turned to look at him, this man who had appeared in her darkest moment and showed her what kindness really meant. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Ethan Anders. Because I love you. Because you make me want to believe in good things again. Because when I imagine my future, you are in every part of it." Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop right there on the road. He turned to her and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too, Clara Turner. I loved you from the moment you looked up at me in that alley, bleeding and afraid but still defiant. I loved your strength, your honesty, your stubborn refusal to accept help until you understood it was freely given. And I will love you every day for the rest of my life." He kissed her then, longer and deeper than before, and Clara felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was happening. She was going to marry this impossible man who gave kindness freely and expected nothing in return. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Fort McDowell. Mrs. Henderson cried and insisted on making the wedding breakfast. Harold Peterson stood up as Ethan's witness, and Mrs. Anderson stood up for Clara. The Reverend Thomas performed the ceremony, and when he pronounced them man and wife, Clara felt like she was starting an entirely new life. The night of their wedding, Ethan carried her over the threshold of the Anderson house, which was now their home. He had spent the past 2 weeks fixing it up, repairing the roof, replacing broken windows, making sure everything was perfect. Clara looked around at the simple furniture, the clean floors, the vase of wildflowers on the kitchen table, and felt tears stream down her face. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect," Ethan replied, setting her down gently. "Clara Anders, I am the luckiest man in the Arizona Territory." That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and care. Ethan was patient, attentive, making sure Clara felt safe and cherished. Afterward, they lay together in the darkness, Clara's head on Ethan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I never thought I could have this," Clara said softly. "A home, a husband who loves me, a future that is not about survival but about actually living." "You deserve all of it," Ethan said, his fingers trailing through her hair. "And we are going to build something beautiful together, not because we have to, but because we want to." The first year of their marriage was hard work but deeply satisfying. Ethan bought a small herd of cattle and spent long days mending fences and managing the stock. Clara kept the house, started a vegetable garden, and took in sewing work from women in town to bring in extra income. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Every morning, without fail, Ethan would bring Clara breakfast in bed before he started his work. It did not matter how early he had to rise or how much he had to do that day. That ritual, that gift of time and attention, remained constant. "You do not have to do this every day," Clara told him one morning, laughing as he presented her with eggs and toast. "I am your wife now, not a guest you have to impress." "I know I do not have to," Ethan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "But I want to. This is my favorite part of the day, Clara, these quiet moments with you before everything else starts." "Why would I give that up?" Clara pulled him down for a kiss. "I love you," she said against his lips. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Do not be scared," Ethan said. "I am not going anywhere. This is forever, Clara. You and me building this life together." And he was right. The years passed and their life together deepened and grew richer. The ranch prospered. Ethan's careful management and Clara's frugality meant they were able to expand their herd and improve their property. They became respected members of the Fort McDowell community, known for their fairness and their willingness to help neighbors in need. When Clara discovered she was pregnant 2 years into their marriage, Ethan's joy was boundless. He hovered over her constantly, worried about every little thing, until Clara finally had to tell him to calm down or she would send him to sleep in the barn. "I am just excited," he said, his hand resting on her still flat belly. "We are going to be parents, Clara. We are going to have a family." "We are already a family," Clara pointed out, "but yes, adding a baby will make it bigger and louder." She covered his hand with hers. "I am excited too. And nervous. What if I do not know how to be a good mother? My own mother died when I was born, and my father was not exactly a model parent." "You will be an amazing mother," Ethan said firmly. "You are kind and strong and patient, and whatever you do not know, we will figure out together." "That is what we do, Clara. We face things together." Their son was born in the spring of 1881, a healthy baby boy with dark hair like his father and his mother's stubborn chin. They named him Samuel, after the neighbor who had helped Ethan so many years ago, the man whose kindness had set Ethan on the path that led to Clara. Ethan cried when he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face as he looked down at the tiny life in his arms. "Hello, Samuel," he whispered. "Welcome to the world. I promise to be the kind of father you deserve. I promise to teach you that kindness is not a transaction, that love is freely given, that good people exist." Clara watched her husband with their baby and felt her heart overflow. This was what she had been missing all those years, this sense of belonging, of being truly loved without conditions or expectations. Ethan had given her that. His daily acts of kindness, his constant proof that good people existed, had healed wounds she did not even know she had. The morning after Samuel was born, despite having been up all night, Ethan still brought Clara breakfast. It was simple, just bread and butter and tea, but he brought it on a tray with a wildflower he had picked from their garden. "Every single morning," Clara said, smiling up at him. "Even when you must be exhausted." "Especially when I am exhausted," Ethan corrected. "Because that is when it matters most. When things are hard, when we are tired, when life is challenging, that is when we most need to remember to be kind to each other." He set the tray across her lap and kissed her forehead. "This is my way of saying I love you, Clara, every morning for the rest of our lives." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "I love you too, and I am so grateful that you found me that day in the alley. I am so grateful that you showed me what real kindness looks like." "I am grateful too," Ethan said, looking over at baby Samuel sleeping in his cradle, "because you gave me everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, someone to share my life with. You made all those years of struggle worth it, Clara." As Samuel grew, he was joined by a daughter they named Alina, and then another son they named William. The little ranch house was filled with noise and laughter. with the chaos of children and the deep contentment of parents who loved each other and their offspring fiercely. Ethan taught his children what his mother had taught him, and what Samuel Wright had shown him through example. That kindness was not a transaction but a way of being, that good people existed and that they could choose to be among them. That love was freely given, not earned through constant performance. And every morning, even with 3 children demanding attention and a ranch to run, Ethan still brought Clara her breakfast. Sometimes it was the children who carried the tray now, Samuel carefully balancing it under his father's supervision, but the ritual remained. The daily reminder that love was not about grand gestures, but about consistent, constant care. Clara would watch her family gathered around her bed, Ethan standing behind the children with his hand on Samuel's shoulder, and she would remember the woman she had been before him. That scared, cynical woman who believed kindness always had a price. Ethan had proved her wrong, morning after morning, year after year. He had shown her that some people gave freely, that love could exist without conditions, that she was worthy of good things simply because she existed. One morning, 20 years after that first breakfast in Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, Clara woke to find Ethan sitting on the edge of their bed with a tray. Their children were grown now. Samuel was married with a child of his own, working a ranch nearby. Eleanor was teaching at the school in Fort McDowell. William was still at home but talking about joining the Territorial Rangers. The house was quieter, but their love had only deepened with time. "Good morning," Ethan said, just like he had said every morning for 2 decades. "Good morning," Clara replied, sitting up and accepting the tray. "Ethan, have you ever missed a day in all these years?" He thought about it seriously. "There was that time I was sick with fever, remember, and you brought me breakfast instead." "That does not count," Clara said, laughing. "I was returning what you had given me for years. Other than that, no," Ethan said simply. "I have never missed a day. Why would I? This is how I tell you I love you, Clara, every single morning." Clara set the tray aside and took his hand. "You changed my life," she said seriously. "That day in the alley, when you stopped to help a stranger who had nothing to offer you, you changed everything. You taught me that good people exist, that kindness can be free, that love does not have to be earned, and you proved it to me every single day since then." Ethan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You changed my life too. You gave me purpose, a reason to keep being the kind of man my mother would be proud of. You made me want to be better, to do better, to build something beautiful, and look at what we created together." He gestured around their home, at the life they had built through decades of consistent love and care. "This is everything I ever wanted, Clara. You are everything I ever wanted." "I thought kindness always had a price," Clara said, echoing the words of her younger self. "But you gave it freely. Every single morning. And I always will," Ethan promised. "Until my last morning on this earth, I will wake up and find a way to show you that you are loved. Not because you earn it, not because you owe me, but because that is what love is. Free, constant, and given without expectation of return." They sat together in the morning light, husband and wife, partners in all things, their hands intertwined. Outside, the ranch they had built together stretched under the Arizona sun. Their children were making their own ways in the world, carrying with them the lessons they had learned from watching their parents love each other well. Clara thought about the frightened woman she had been, bleeding in an alley, certain that every act of kindness came with strings attached. She thought about how Ethan had proved her wrong, not with words but with actions. Day after day, month after month, year after year, he had shown her that good people existed, that love could be freely given, that she was worthy of kindness simply because she was a human being in need. And she had learned to give that same kindness back, not as payment, not as obligation, but as a natural expression of the love that had grown between them. Their marriage was not transactional. It was a dance, a give and take that flowed naturally because both partners were committed to each other's well-being above their own. As the years continued to pass, their morning ritual never changed. Ethan brought Clara breakfast, and Clara received it with the same gratitude and wonder she had felt that first morning in Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. It became legendary in Fort McDowell, this cowboy who still courted his wife decades into their marriage, who proved every single day that kindness was not a burden but a gift. When Samuel brought his own children to visit, they would watch their grandfather prepare breakfast for their grandmother with solemn attention. "Why does Grandpa do that every day?" young Elizabeth asked Clara once. Clara smiled and pulled her granddaughter onto her lap. "Because your grandfather understands something important. Love is not just a feeling, it is a choice. Every morning he chooses to show me he loves me. He does not do it because he has to. He does it because he wants to, and that makes all the difference. Will someone do that for me one day?" Elizabeth asked. "If you are lucky enough to find someone who understands that love is freely given, not earned," Clara said. "And more importantly, if you become the kind of person who gives love freely too. It goes both ways, sweetheart. Your grandfather gives me breakfast every morning, but I show him I love him in my own ways too. I pack his lunch before he rides out to check the herd. I mend his shirts. I listen to his worries at the end of the day. Love is about both people choosing every day to care for each other." Elizabeth nodded seriously, taking in this wisdom. "I want to be like you and Grandpa," she said. "Then be kind," Clara said simply. "Even when it is hard, even when people have hurt you, choose kindness and you will attract kind people into your life." On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. The whole town came to celebrate, bringing food and gifts and stories about how Ethan and Clara had helped them over the years. The Anders family was beloved in Fort McDowell, known for their generosity and their strong marriage. During the party, Harold Peterson, now an old man himself, stood up to make a toast. "I have known Ethan Anders for over 2 decades," he said. "And in all that time, I have never known him to do an unkind thing. When he came to me about Clara's debt all those years ago, I was not surprised. That is who Ethan is. He sees someone in need and he helps. No questions, no conditions, no expectations. And Clara has been his perfect match, giving back that same kindness to everyone she meets. They have shown this town what a good marriage looks like, and we are all better for having known them." The crowd raised their glasses, and Clara felt Ethan's arm come around her waist. "We did good, did not we?" he murmured in her ear. "We did very good," Clara agreed, leaning into him. "Thank you for saving me, Ethan. Thank you for showing me what real kindness looks like." "Thank you for letting me," Ethan replied. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy with strange ideas about giving things away for free." They laughed together, surrounded by their family and friends, celebrating a quarter-century of love built on a foundation of freely given kindness. As they grew older, their roles gradually shifted. Ethan's joints began to ache in the morning, his movements slower than they had been. Clara developed a cough that lingered. They helped each other more, leaned on each other more literally as their bodies aged, but Ethan never stopped bringing Clara breakfast, even when it took him longer to walk from the kitchen to their bedroom, even when his hands shook slightly as he carried the tray. Every single morning, without fail, he showed up with food and love, and the constancy that had defined their entire relationship. "You do not have to do this anymore," Clara told him gently when they were both in their 60s. "I could come to the kitchen. It would be easier." "But this is our time," Ethan protested. This is how we start every day together before the world intrudes. Why would I want to change that?" So Clara stopped suggesting it. She understood now, deeply and completely, that this ritual was not about the food. It was about the promise Ethan had made all those years ago. It was about proving every single morning that his love was constant, that she could count on him. That kindness did not have a price. Their children eventually convinced them to move into town, to a small house closer to the doctor and the church. The ranch was turned over to Samuel, who ran it with the same careful attention his father had taught him. Ethan and Clara settled into a quieter life, spending their days on the porch, watching Fort McDowell continue to grow and change. And every morning, Ethan brought Clara breakfast. One winter morning, when Clara was 70 and Ethan was 73, Clara woke to find Ethan sitting on the edge of their bed but without a tray. She looked at him questioningly, and he smiled softly. "I wanted to talk to you before breakfast this morning," he said. "I have been thinking about that first day we met. Do you remember?" "Every detail," Clara said, sitting up. "You found me bleeding in an alley, and you helped me even though I insisted I could not pay you. You were so certain that I wanted something from you," Ethan remembered. "So sure that kindness always came with a price. And I promised myself that morning that I would prove you wrong, that I would show you every single day that good people existed." "And you did," Clara said, taking his hand. "You proved it over and over. Every morning for 47 years, you have shown me that love is freely given." 47 years, Ethan repeated wonderingly. "That is 17,155 breakfasts, give or take a few," Clara laughed. "You counted." "I pay attention," Ethan said, squeezing her hand. "Because every morning with you has been a gift, Clara, every single one. And I wanted you to know that if I could do it all again, I would not change a single thing." "Neither would I," Clara said softly. "You gave me everything, Ethan. A home, a family, a life worth living. But most of all, you gave me yourself, freely, constantly, without ever asking for anything in return. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." They sat together in the morning light, holding hands, these two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and built something beautiful from it. Their love had weathered decades, raised children, survived hardships, and grown deeper with every passing year. Finally, Ethan stood. "Now let me get you some breakfast," he said. "I have missed too many mornings at this point to start now." He walked to the kitchen, moving slowly but steadily, and returned with a tray of tea and toast. It was simple, but it was perfect, just like it had always been. Clara accepted it with the same gratitude she had felt the first time, and they ate together as the sun rose over Fort McDowell, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Ethan Anders lived to be 82 years old. And every morning of those 82 years, from the day he met Clara until the day he died, he brought her breakfast. It was the constancy she had never thought possible, the proof she had needed that kindness could be freely given. When he finally passed, peacefully in his sleep after a long and well-lived life, Clara grieved deeply. But she also celebrated because she had been given something precious. 47 years with a man who had taught her that good people existed, who had proved every single morning that love did not have a price, who had given her kindness freely, never asking for anything in return. The morning after Ethan died, Clara woke to find a tray on her bedside table. On it was a simple breakfast and a letter in Ethan's handwriting. With shaking hands, she opened it. "My dearest Clara," it read, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am sorry to leave you. I asked Samuel to bring you this final breakfast on my behalf, because I could not bear the thought of you waking up to an empty morning after so many years of our ritual. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." That day I found you in the alley, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I did not know I was meeting the woman who would become my whole world. You taught me that kindness has power, that one small act can change everything. You showed me what it means to be truly loved in return. I hope I proved to you that good people exist. I hope I showed you that kindness does not have to have a price. And I hope you will remember, every morning for the rest of your life, that you are worthy of love simply because you exist. Not because of what you can do or give or be, but because you are Clara and you are precious. I will be waiting for you, my love. And when we meet again, I promise to bring you breakfast every morning in whatever comes next. Until then, live well. Love our children and grandchildren. And know that my love for you is constant, even now. Forever yours, Ethan. Clara held the letter to her chest and cried, but they were not just tears of grief. They were tears of gratitude for a life well lived, for a love freely given, for all those mornings when a cowboy had proved that kindness could be given without expecting anything in return. She lived for another 8 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, sharing Ethan's story with anyone who would listen. She told them about that first morning, about his constancy, about how one man's simple act of kindness had changed the trajectory of her entire life. And every morning, Samuel brought his mother breakfast, continuing his father's tradition, because Ethan had taught his children well. He had shown them that love was not about grand gestures but about daily choices. About showing up consistently, constantly, proving through action rather than words that you cared. When Clara finally passed in her sleep at the age of 78, surrounded by her loving family, her last thought was of Ethan. She could almost see him waiting for her, that familiar smile on his face, holding a tray with breakfast. And she smiled too, knowing that their story was not over, that somewhere, somehow, they would have another morning together. The town of Fort McDowell never forgot Ethan and Clara Anders. Their story became legend, passed down through generations. The small ranch they had built became prosperous under Samuel's management, and then his children's management. The family continued to embody the values Ethan and Clara had lived by. Kindness without expectation, love freely given, constancy in the face of change. On the anniversary of their wedding every year, the town would gather to celebrate their memory. The local school even started an award in their honor, given to students who embodied their values of kindness and service. And in the family, the tradition continued. Samuel brought his wife breakfast every morning. His children did the same for their spouses. Elizabeth, who had asked her grandmother about love so many years ago, grew up to marry a kind man who brought her breakfast daily, and she smiled every time, thinking of her grandparents. The story of Ethan and Clara became a reminder that good people existed, that kindness could be freely given, that love was not a transaction but a choice, made daily, proven through constant action. They had shown an entire community what it meant to live with integrity, to care for others without expectation, to build a life on a foundation of genuine goodness. Their gravestone in the small cemetery overlooking Fort McDowell bore a simple inscription: Ethan and Clara Anders. He gave kindness freely. She learned to receive it. Together they built a life of love, and beneath that, added by their children, every single morning. It was a fitting tribute to two people who had proved that the simplest acts, repeated with constancy and care, could change lives. That one cowboy's decision to help a stranger without expecting payment could create ripples that spread through generations. That kindness, freely given, was the most powerful force in the world. Their love story was not dramatic in the way of novels. There were no epic adventures, no great battles, no sweeping tragedies. It was quiet, domestic, built on the accumulated weight of thousands of ordinary mornings. But it was real, and it was powerful, and it showed everyone who knew them what love should look like. Clara had thought kindness always had a price. Ethan had proved her wrong, and in doing so he had given her everything: a home, a family, a life filled with love and meaning. He had shown her that she was worthy of good things, not because of what she could offer, but simply because she was. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all. Not the breakfasts themselves, though they were lovely. Not the material comfort of the ranch or the security of marriage. But the deep, bone-level certainty that she was loved without conditions. That every morning for the rest of her life, someone would choose her. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Ethan had given Clara that gift freely, every single morning for 47 years. And Clara had learned to give it back, creating a partnership built on mutual care and respect. They had raised children who understood the value of freely given kindness. They had built a community that celebrated those values. They had lived lives that mattered, not because they were wealthy or powerful, but because they were good. And so their story ended not with death but with legacy. The love they had built continued through their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. The lessons they had taught spread through Fort McDowell and beyond. And somewhere, somehow, in whatever comes after this life, Ethan Anders was surely bringing Clara Turner breakfast, still proving, even in eternity, that kindness had no price and love was freely given. Every single morning.